I have seen the greatest cities in the world change their gods. I stood at the walls of Constantinople when the cross gave way to the crescent. But this story is about the time the cross came to take back what it believed was its own. On July 15th, 1099, thousands of people were slaughtered inside one of the holiest places on earth. The killers were not barbarian. They believed they were doing God's work. They had walked for 3 years through deserts, mountains, and starvation to get here. They lost everything: their families, their health, their comrades. And when they finally broke through the walls of Jerusalem, they drowned the holy city in blood. This is the story of the First Crusade. And it doesn't begin with a sword. It begins with a single speech. November 1095. The city of Clermont, France. Pope Urban II stepped before a crowd of thousands. Knights, monks, peasants. He told them that far to the east, Muslim Turks had seized the Holy Land, that Christian pilgrims were being killed on the road to the Holy Sepulchre, that Jerusalem, the city where Christ was crucified and risen, was groaning under foreign rule. And then he spoke the words that changed history forever. God wills it. The crowd erupted. Deus Vult! Deus Vult! Thousands of men sewed crosses onto their clothes on the spot. The crusade was born. Tens of thousands answered the call. Knights, peasants, even children. Without waiting for the main army, a mob of peasants led by a monk called Peter, the hermit, marched first. On the way through Germany, they massacred Jewish communities. The first blood of the crusade was spilled not in the Holy Land, but in Europe. Few reached Asia Minor. The Turks destroyed them almost entirely. The main army, 35,000 knights and infantry, departed later. They marched through Constantinople, through the mountains of Anatolia, through the deserts of Syria. Heat, disease, starvation, endless skirmishes. Of the 35,000 who set out, fewer than 13,000 would reach Jerusalem. On the way to Jerusalem, the Crusaders became stuck at Antioch, one of the greatest fortresses of the East. The siege lasted 8 months. The Crusaders starved so badly that chronicles describe cannibalism. They ate bark, leather, rats. In June 1098, the city fell through a traitor who opened the gates at night. But the joy was short-lived. 3 days later, a massive Muslim army surrounded the Crusaders inside Antioch. Now they were the ones under siege. And then came what the Crusaders called a miracle. A monk named Peter Bartholomew claimed that St. Andrew appeared to him and revealed where the Holy Lance was hidden, the very spear that had pierced Christ on the cross. They dug beneath the cathedral, and they found it. This lifted the army's spirit so powerfully that the Crusaders charged out of the gates and defeated the Muslim army in open battle. Miracle or not, Antioch was theirs. On June 7th, 1099, the surviving Crusaders finally saw Jerusalem. According to the chronicles, hardened warriors wept and fell to their knees. They had walked 3 years for this moment. But joy quickly turned to dread. The city was ready. The Fatimid governor, Iftikhar ad-Dawla, had expelled all Christians, poisoned the wells outside the walls, and driven away the livestock. The Crusaders had no siege engines, no water. The nearest source was 6 miles away. No wood to build ladders. The land around was desert, and they knew a massive Egyptian army was marching to relieve the city. They had weeks, not months. On June 13th, the Crusaders tried to storm the walls. With no ladders, no siege towers, on pure faith alone, it was a disaster. Dozens died. The city seemed impregnable. But 2 weeks later, Genoese ships arrived at the port of Jaffa carrying tools and timber. The Crusaders dismantled the ships for wood and began building 2 massive siege towers. And on July 8th, something remarkable happened. On the orders of their priests, the entire army, knights, infantry, monks, removed their shoes and walked barefoot around the walls of Jerusalem, singing hymns and praying. Just as Joshua had once marched around the walls of Jericho, the Muslims on the walls laughed. They mocked the crosses the Crusaders carried. But for the Crusaders, this changed everything. They were no longer an army, they were pilgrims, carrying out the will of God. At dawn on July 15th, 1099, the final assault began. Godfrey of Bouillon led the attack from the north. His siege tower inched toward the wall under a rain of arrows and Greek fire. Defenders hurled stones and poured boiling oil. Hours passed. The tower caught fire. Men died. But Godfrey did not stop. By midday, his tower touched the wall. The first knights leaped across. The brothers Leithold and Engelbert of Tournai. Others poured in behind them. They fought along the wall, pushing back the defenders, and descended to the gates. The gates swung open, and thousands of Crusaders flooded into the holy city. What happened next became one of the darkest pages in history. The Crusaders killed everyone: Muslims, Jews, men, women, children, without distinction. Thousands of Muslims sheltered in the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount. The Crusaders stormed in and slaughtered them all. The Jews gathered in the main synagogue. The Crusaders set it on fire. The chronicler Raymond of Aguilers wrote, "Blood reached up to the ankles in the Temple of Solomon." Even by the brutal standards of the 11th century, this was shocking. Men who had walked 3 years for God, killed in the name of God. When the killing stopped, the Crusaders, in blood-soaked clothes, walked to the church of the Holy Sepulchre. They wept with joy. Godfrey of Bouillon was chosen as ruler, but he refused the title of king. He said, "I will not wear a golden crown where Christ wore a crown of thorns." He took the title Defender of the Holy Sepulchre. He died within a year. The kingdom of Jerusalem lasted 88 years, until Saladin recaptured the city in 1187. But Saladin did not massacre anyone. He remembered what the Crusaders had done, and he chose mercy. The crusade began with a call for help from Constantinople, but 100 years later the Crusaders would return to Constantinople and destroy it. The city that asked for help would be betrayed by the very men who came to save it. But that is another story. If this story moved you, subscribe. I have witnessed the fall of many empires, and I will show you every one of them. Like this video if you want the next chapter sooner. Leave a comment. Which empire should fall next? The chronicler remembers, and there is so much more to tell.